how do you feel about having traveled to these different places and connected with with African artists? How did you feel? What connection did you feel there between the birth of the blues, places like Senegal and
Well, I've never been to Senegal.
oh, okay.
Alex is trying to get me there, and maybe by all means necessary, we'll be flying there next year. I remember I was in Morocco. I mean, I always connect to all kind of musicians, but when you can connect culturally, there's a special signal that I get, from different artists on the culture scene, and that connection is like we don't have to understand even the language barrier, but we understand. I know you, you know me, just by our sounds of what we play, what we represent, and even what we wear, you know. So, Alex is a bridge to all that.
Talk to me about humanitarian work and artists and the importance of artists coming together now as the music industry changes and morphs, and the lines between world music and mainstream have become blurred. Talk to me about how, in this new face of the industry, um, artists, what connections are artists making, and what do you envision as the future of that, and why is it important that these artists now create that and become like solidarity between artists and, let's say, your brothers in Africa who maybe are having a really hard time of things?
Well, I would have to talk on my own experience. I grew up on the south side of the ghetto. We have a lot of things: gunplay, drugs, um, just poverty and no education, very low education, and I educated myself more through the music than in the schooling system, and more through the streets, because I grew up on the streets, and music has become my mainly educator, and I call it my spiritual teacher. Um, and some on a humanity level, I remember being in Africa, and I just seen this kid. He just wanted to really play guitar. Very bright kid. I was like, wow, if this kid was in America, man, he just, he would really prevail really well, because he had this very enthusiasm to want to learn. And, but, being that all means that he lived in a situation where he's at, I just see inspiration that us artists supposed to keep bringing that to him, so that kid can have a gateway or a bridge to cross over, and we have to close that gap between the young and the old, so that they can connect to us and we can connect to them, because the mainstream separates that. It's basically under 22 now. Artists, when they bring them, sign them, and process them and form them and everything. It never used to be back there like in the old days. Everything you heard, everything you can hear, everything on the radio. Now you only have a special a particular curriculum of music that's playing on the mainstream, as far as video and promotion and the media, how they perpetrate the mainstream artists. You probably got a handful of 5 artists that's the 5 or 10 artists that you hear consistently on the mainstream, and you may not even hear because of their music about what's going on. You just hear about a chaotic situation, what's going on with the artists, and that and whatever, and that is the promotional or the marketing thing that the mainstream use. the humanitarian level, you have many artists that really. I mean, you got some older artists that's on a humanitarian level that's really pushing it, but you don't hear that in the mainstream media. And it's just like everyday life. I mean, like you watch the news, they're gonna say they're not gonna talk about, okay, today a community planted like 400 trees to help. Excuse me. To help start a beautiful environment or something. You're gonna hear about some guy or something happening chaotic on the news. I mean, that is the mainstream today. I gotta criticize it. It's always pushing negativity, which tends to sell. Did I answer that question correctly?
You did. My last question is, you talked about this a little bit earlier, but music being a universal language. And
Music is the universe.
yeah, elaborate a little bit more on that and the connection between people from other countries, and especially as the industry changes now.
Mm. Well, well, the blues, to me, I'm going to explain to American cultural, which is pop music, or which come from Ma Rainey, we haven't been the first black woman in Africa. I mean, in Mississippi, having the first pop, single, which they name popular music. But it's a very strange and forte of history, because popular music come from the slaves who was taken over and oppressed and in slavery. So that form of music comes from some way transformed from Africa over to America, which we call popular music, which created rock and roll, jazz, blues, which is a form of blues, gospel, hip hop, funk, whatever. So whatever you hear on the radio, popular music, it comes. The slaves played a huge role in that, and it's just like they're the mothers and the fathers of that, and through that oppression, they freed themselves by their music, their art, their craft, their culture that they carried, and still today they carry today. And but I think we have lost some of that, that way of life, that knowledge, that wisdom that's been passed on. And I think the American society has lost a huge part of that. We'll care not to look at it, because you're not going to see a more a cultural artist on mainstream today, representing their culture, not representing the brand or a fad or what's going on. I got bling or whatever. We all would love to make money. I mean, seriously, but sometimes we must sacrifice just a little, just to really, be one with spirit. And that's the suffering of, a lot of, more culture, and I call them, artists go through. Indigenous artists, world music artists go through. But now, we got DJs that's making millions of dollars a year. But I feel that the world is, the society of the world, just the society of the world is imbalanced. Because there's enough to go around for everybody, but greed plays a huge role in that, and I wish that one day that the music industry can separate themselves from that and get more on a cultural building base, and that will start to help, send a signal to a lot of these governments that we here on a humanitarian level to help our people through our music, and we will not be denied. Speaking of that, Beyonce is doing humanitarian work for the United Nations now. I think that's good. We need bigger artists to really step into and just put they have the resources and they have the name, and just put your foot and make a statement for someone else in need. That's what that's what we artists, we were supposed to be there. We're in service for the people. We do not play music for ourselves, not only for people but for the whole planet, for nature, everything. That's our jobs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.